Disney is a company famous for its songs: Beauty and the Beast, A Whole New World, The Circle of Life, Let It Go, and so forth. What seems less discussed, though, are the Disney pop covers. These were top 40 radio-friendly versions of Disney animated ballads that always played at the end credits, particularly during the Renaissance era. But the last time a cover of a Disney song made any sort of impact was generously around 2014. The Disney songs that chart these days are the film versions. And why is that? Well, in this video, I'm going to try and answer that as I explore Disney pop covers, explaining their origins, showing how some of them are lyrically different from their film counterparts, and finally, the question you've all been waiting for. Why did they stop being important? Were they ever important? It's, maybe not as dramatic as I'm making it out to be. But, before we get into the subject at hand, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Anyway, it's a whole new world as we explore Disney pop covers. Turning a Disney song into a pop tune was a no-brainer. It was a way to promote the film. It would help with soundtrack sales. And it was meant to not confuse Academy Award members when it came time to vote for Best Original Song, because multiple songs from the same Disney film could and have been nominated. Beauty and the Beast got 3 Best Song nominations in 1901. Let's focus on the title track, so we don't confuse Academy members, and have something like Everything I Do It For You, from Robin Hood, Princess Thieves, Sneak to Victory. But the origins of the Disney pop covers date back earlier than the Disney Renaissance. A lot of credit here should be given to the 1986 animated musical An American Tail. Don Bluth's story of the struggles of an immigrant mouse family was one of the year's biggest surprises at the box office, even outgrossing Disney's animated offering that year, which was also coincidentally about a mouse, The Great Mouse Detective. Sensing potential crossover radio success, An American Tail's producer Steven Spielberg got singers Linda Ronstadt and James Ingram to record a pop duet of the film's main ballad, Somewhere Out There. Which played over the end credits. It did quite well, reaching number 2 in the charts, winning Best Song written specifically for a motion picture or television show at the Grammys, and more importantly, proving to be an important tool in helping to promote the film. Disney didn't immediately act upon the strategy that An American Tail had employed with Somewhere Out There as a promotional single. For example, the first film of the Disney Renaissance, The Little Mermaid, didn't have a pop cover playing over its end credits. Instead, it features a reprise of Under the Sea, which makes the movie special in a way and also marks the end of an era. The first official Disney song to get a pop makeover was the title track from 1991's Beauty and the Beast. Disney songs of that point were written to mirror classical Broadway musicals. Lyricist Howard Ashman and composer Alan Menken, the two men credited with creating the sound of the Disney Renaissance, had both gotten their start in that medium. But pop radio is pop radio, and Broadway is Broadway. Especially in 1991, those were compositionally and lyrically two very different things. Heck, Paige O'Hara, the voice of Belle, asked if she could sing the pop version of Beauty and the Beast, and Disney said no, because they thought her voice was too Broadway.
Yeah, Paige was very disappointed. She wanted to do the pop version. She don't let her kid you. She wanted to do it.
I know. Why didn't you?
And I
Celine, don't get me wrong.
No, I mean, I could do it, but they saw me as a legit Broadway person, and they said, no, it doesn't fit.
So, instead, Disney decided to do the next best thing. They hired some relatively unknown Canadian female singer named Celine Dion to do a version of Beauty and the Beast. In 1991, Celine Dion was still trying to make a name for herself in the English-language North American market, only having had one top 10 Billboard hit. Prior to Beauty and the Beast, her version of the song Dreams to Dream from the sequel An American Tail 2 Philo Goes West was rejected in favor of one by Linda Ronstadt, a decision that had disappointed Dion greatly. Disney specifically hired Dion because she was cheap, but they didn't trust her. So, to ensure she had some helping hands, They hired recognizable adventure journeyman Peabo Bryson, and made the song a duet. This version of Beauty and the Beast was rearranged by musician Robbie Buchanan and produced by Walter Afanasieff. Afanasieff was best known at the time for his collaborations with Mariah Carey. And would later work with Celine Dion on My Heart Will Go On. So, that right there should tell you what we're in for. A lot of overproduced, cheesy 90s synths meant for the sophisticated adult contemporary charts. Unfortunately, as a cover of Beauty and the Beast, I don't think it's successful. The song Beauty and the Beast works because it has all that build-up. In the film, it's presented as a true progression for Belle and the Beast's relationship. The pivotal moment where everything seems to be working wonderfully for the two. Angela Lansbury's vocals are stately and perfect. It sounds like an older woman describing two younger people who are falling for each other but are still unsure. Neither one prepared. Get it?
Small to say the least, both a little scared, neither one prepared. Beauty and the Beast.
Then there's the pop duet, which removes all that stateliness and now makes it sound like any anonymous, low-tempo adult contemporary ballad from that era. It's not like I despised it as a cover, even if I can't help but compare it to the Lansbury classic. Bryson and Dion's vocals are lovely, and they actually play off each other well. It's just that overall, it's a big old puddle of unremarkable, overpolished meh. The bland bread of pop music. I will give it this, though. It's the perfect closer for the movie. The sort of low-tempo ballad that gently tells you to exit the theater. But what do I know? Nobody should take my opinions that seriously. The Dion Bryson version of Beauty and the Beast was successful. It reached number 9 in the Billboard charts, and at that year's Academy Awards, Dion, Bryson, and Lansbury all performed Beauty and the Beast live. The supposed pop gamble had paid off, and it would be Disney's strategy going forward. They released an animated musical, and alongside it, there would be a pop version of one of its songs, or even sometimes two from the soundtrack, that would be played during the credits. Peabo Bryson, him again, and Regine Bell's cover of A Whole New World hit number 1 in the Billboard charts in 1993, being the first Disney song to hold that distinction. Elton John's Can You Feel Love Tonight from The Lion King made it into the top 10 in 1984. And Vanessa Williams' rendition of Colors of the Wind from Pocahontas reached number 4 in 1995. Which would be, until 2014, the last Disney song to make a sizable impact. Following The Lion King, Disney animated movies dipped a bit in popularity, and the pop covers chart positions seem to reflect that. Curiously, sometimes Disney would decide to release a deleted song and pass it off as a radio single. For example, while Vanessa Williams did a cover of Colors of the Wind, Pocahontas also ends with a duet ballad, If I Never Knew You, performed by Shanice and John Cicada, two singers who basically existed in the 90s and nowhere else. If I Never Knew You is a song that was supposed to occur in the film the night before John Smith is about to be executed. It is about how he and Pocahontas affected each other's lives. Like most of Pocahontas, it's a pretty mature song for a movie that desperately wants to be mature, but isn't very good at it. It was cut from the movie for pacing reasons following a test screening, but can still be heard in the score as the film's love theme. Although maybe Disney executives were concerned that kids would love Mel Gibson's singing voice a little too much.
I would have as life can be.
No thanks.
As a pop song, If I Never Knew You is one of those adult contemporary duet ballads that I should be a little more ambivalent about. It reminds me of the Dion Bryson version of Beauty and the Beast, insofar that it comes from the same adult contemporary group factory. I wasn't surprised when I learned they were both rearranged by Robbie Buchanan, but actually, I think this song's kinda beautiful. It's got a lovely melody, and the singers work in tandem with each other very well. Shanice I know largely for I Love Your Smile, which is a very silly song that is nonetheless quite catchy. I was surprised by how beautiful her voice was when she wasn't singing kindergarten level lyrics. The way she hits the high note in the big middle is just, wow. That's quite the holler you've got there, miss. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you are auditioning to be a movie scream queen. While John Cicada is not someone I was really familiar with until I learned about the song's existence, but he's got a nice, albeit generic voice.
If I never knew you, if I never felt this love.
All in all, it's a fine cover. Something that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. The Hunchback of Notre Dame's promotional single was Someday, an inspirational, rejected song that was supposed to be sung in the scene where Esmeralda visits the cathedral.
Someday, when we are wiser, when the world's older.
It was replaced in the film with a much more melancholic sounding God Help the Outcasts, as directors Gary Trousdale and Kurt Wise desired a much quieter number.
God help the outcasts, hungry from birth.
It should be noted, though, that the Gypsy Prayer line from Outcasts originated with Someday, and much like If I Never Knew You, its melody can also be heard in the film's score at various points.
Long lifeline. Oh, and this one means you're shy.
From what I could gather, Disney had already decided that Someday would be the Hunchback's big single before it had even been thrown on the cutting room floor. The soundtrack does include a cover of God Help the Outcasts, performed by Bette Midler, which apparently Disney was planning to release as a single at one point, but never did.
God help the outcasts, hungry from birth. Show them mercy they don't find on earth.
Call this a crazy hunch, but I'm guessing they were worried that a song with the lyrics, "I thought we were all the children of God," might attract the wrong crowd. Let's just say, the same people who were likely to picket Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ. Yeah, Disney was never releasing this song as a single. There were two different English language versions of Someday. If you lived in North America, it was performed by the band All for One, who were most famous at the time for their cover of I Swear.
And I swear by the moon and the stars and the skies, I'll be there.
However, if you lived in much of Europe, the song was instead covered by the British group Eternal. Are you an American and don't know who Eternal is? Well, in the 1990s, they were one of the more successful girl groups in the UK. Over here in America, they only ever had one vague hit, which was their debut single, Stay. This is great. The sort of UK R&B tune that I can really get behind. It's unfortunate this song appears to have been forgotten, and this group never caught on in America. I guess you could say it didn't exactly stay with people. Oh, Dan, you are so bad at this. There are actually some differences between All for One's and Eternal's renditions of Someday, beyond one being performed by an all-boys group and the other by an all-girls group. The All for One version of Someday turned the song into more of an R&B tune, with a new verse about dark and bitter days, and how we'll all share in having a prayer for something better, someday. Typical of the group, it also has their vocals bouncing off each other, which makes it a little more exciting in my opinion. While the Eternal version of Someday is also R&B in its approach, and has the same lyrical change, it's much more orchestral and features strings. The Eternal version does have the better music video though. It's inspired by the Festival of Fools sequence from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, complete with a Clopin-like jester character who keeps reappearing throughout. Even the backgrounds are a little, animated looking, let's just say. In comparison, the All For One music video, directed by Antoine Fuqua, just has the group walking down a street with a giant building in the background. Whoa, they look like they spent a fortune on this. And if you think it's crazy that I pointed out the differences between two versions of the same song released together, then let me introduce you to the Donna Summer Club remix of Someday from the album Mouse House Disney Dance Mixes. God, I am so glad I discovered this. It's not that great of a remix if I'm being honest, but it beats having listened to all these low covers over and over again. Ultimately, both of these versions strike me as being almost exactly the same. They're beautiful, but kind of dull interpretations of an inspiring ballad. Disney made the correct call when they decided to replace Someday in the film with a quieter, but much more powerful hymn like God Help the Outcasts. Although not featured in the film's end credits, but released as a single, Elton John's sung album version of The Circle of Life is actually somewhat different from the one by Kamal Twilly and Leon M. that we're all more familiar with. And yes, before you descend upon me all like a rabid pack of fanboys, I'm aware that Elton John wrote the music for the songs from The Lion King, but his versions were the ones intended for commercial release, so I'm counting it. Not only have some of the lyrics been changed,
It's the circle of life, and it wounds us all. In the circle of life, is the wheel of fortune.
but there's an entire new section which appears to take the place of the instrumental part of the film's opening.
Some of us fall by the wayside, and some of us soar to the stars.
While I've talked about radio songs that have pop versions where the lyrics were changed or altered, this is perhaps the one that impressed me the most. It takes what was already great about The Circle of Life and expands upon it. I think I might actually prefer it over the original. I don't know if that would be considered a hot take, but I'm sticking with it. The other thing to note about these pop covers is that they're a good look at the music industry in the 1990s, where it was going and what it was leaving behind. I already mentioned that Beauty and the Beast was part of Celine Dion's breakthrough in the English language North American market. But did you know that Christina Aguilera's cover of Reflection from Mulan was her solo single debut? Yep.
When will my reflection show who I am?
The story goes that Disney wanted someone who could belt Reflection out and not just sing in a falsetto. Aguilera had been a member of the New Mickey Mouse Club as a child, and to prove she could belt, she grabbed a cheap tape recorder, recorded a version of Whitney Houston's I Run to You with the E note that Disney wanted full strength on, and then sent off the tape. Not only was she successful, but she also got a deal with RCA Records around the same time.
This was the exact phrase that I had to prove myself on with. Inside, that was the note. Inside.
Her version of Reflection is one of the better Disney pop covers. Although I'll admit, this is largely because I heard it all the time as a kid because of a Radio Disney album I had. Guilty as charged. Oh, and even though it doesn't fit with the subject of this video, as it was a song always meant for the end credits, I would like to acknowledge the existence of True to Your Heart from Mulan, with Stevie Wonder and the boy band 98 Degrees. This is like the most late 90s thing imaginable. Look at Stevie go. Conversely, All for One's version of Someday from The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Michael Bolton's I Can Go the Distance from Hercules were both of those artists' last top 40 hits, respectively. The Michael Bolton cover in particular is a little confusing because, why the heck did Disney decide to land on him to do their Hercules number? Okay, so we've got this inspiring young man's ballad about following your dreams.
I will find my way. I can go the distance. I'll be there someday.
And we're going to give it to the softest, shoutiest, world-weary sounding rocker possible. You know, the guy whose music often goes something like this.
It just don't add up.
I mean, this is a fine cover, I guess. It's just that it's given a little bit of an old hat vibe. If you had told me this came out in 1991 and not 1987, I'd have believed you. I guess the synths are a little more advanced. I will give Bolton's version this, though. It does have a killer over-the-top guitar solo from Dan Huff. Can't go wrong with that. By the late 90s, Disney and Disney animators were getting tired of musicals. While 1998's Mulan had 5 major musical numbers, its last act was notably entirely without any songs. 1999's Tarzan took things even further. Phil Collins contributed a soundtrack for the film, but save for Trash in the Camp, which doesn't even really count, and Glenn Close's very, very brief rendition of You'll Be in My Heart at the beginning. None of them were performed by any of the main characters. And this trend continued into the 2000s, with movies that mostly used music for the end credits or montages. Disney returned to animated musicals in the late 2000s with The Princess and the Frog and Tangled, but neither of those films had pop singles made out of their songs. The Princess and the Frog did have the bland Never Knew I Needed, performed by Neo, but it was always intended for the credits and not written by the film's composer Randy Newman. The real turning point, though, came with 2013's Frozen. The movie became a surprise juggernaut at the box office, and in preparation for its release, Disney and Demi Lovato, at the time a reliable hitmaker, performed a pop-friendly version of the show-stopping number Let It Go. The studio was wary of releasing the Idina Menzel film version, as she wasn't a pop star, and to them, it didn't sound like something that would play on the radio. I don't know where I've heard that one before. However, much to Disney's surprise, Demi Lovato's version of Let It Go ended up stalling in the charts. And instead, it was the film version performed by Idina Menzel that caught fire. Sometime around January, Disney stopped promoting Demi Lovato Let It Go and decided the Idina Menzel original was the ideal one to push. Let It Go eventually hit the Billboard Top 10, becoming the first Disney song to do so since Vanessa Williams' cover of Colors of the Wind in 1995. And I can even verify all of this, by the way, as I remember Let It Go being inescapable around 2014. You know your song's made it when it's playing at a college cafeteria alongside other radio hits. A number of factors led to the film version of Let It Go being as big as it was. Frozen was a phenomenon. Growing platforms like Spotify and YouTube had made it easier for music to catch on. And while Let It Go may have been compositionally weird compared to so much of what was popular in 2013 and 2014, for one thing, it actually develops its melody and doesn't beat you over the head with a repetitive loop. Thank God. It surprisingly fit in with the era's popular ballads really nicely. But I think more than anything, Let It Go's success is primarily the result of the enduring legacy of Disney songs in general. Even when Disney released those pop covers in the 1990s, they never superseded the original versions in terms of recognizability among the general public. Disney animated songs are timeless. The pop covers from the 90s and beyond, in comparison, are very much rooted in their time. Why listen to Demi Lovato's cover of Let It Go, which is at best a nice extension, when you listen to the original by Idina Menzel instead? After all, isn't it the one from the movie you fell in love with? But even though Let It Go was the biggest Disney animated song in decades, it didn't exactly lead the company to change course entirely when it came to releasing pop promotional versions of its movie songs. One thing was clear though, you can release both the film and a cover version at the same time, and both could potentially catch on platforms like Spotify and TikTok. Disney tried this strategy with Frozen 2 and its big song Into the Unknown. The first version of Into the Unknown released was the one in the film sung by Idina Menzel and New Zealand singer Aurora. The other was by the band Panic at the Disco. Now, I'll admit, I'm torn between these two versions. The Idina Menzel original is ideal for her voice, and Aurora's background vocals give it an air of mystery. However, I found the Panic at the Disco version had more oomph to it. It felt alive, and it was fun to listen to. But it's also a little more overproduced in my opinion. They're really trying to blow the song in your ears in this version.
Pipe down, Chachi.
It is Idina's song though, so I have no choice but to give it to her. But both of these pale in comparison to Weezer's magnificent take on Frozen 2's Lost in the Woods. I know Disney Mania used to be a thing, but they should do more stuff like this. In 2021, Disney released the animated musical Encanto, with songs by Lin-Manuel Miranda. The movie came out during the peak of the pandemic, and because of this, Disney didn't give it the greatest of pushes, announcing that it would be coming to Disney Plus a month after its theatrical run. A theatrical shrug of a release, you might say. However, the Encanto movie and soundtrack had long legs, blowing up in sites like TikTok after it was released on Disney Plus. So, while the movie only did so-so business at the box office, by early 2022, its music was practically unavoidable, with every single one of its songs having made it into the Billboard Top 40. Notably, We Don't Talk About Bruno became the first Disney song to reach number 1 since the Peabo Bryce and Regine Bell cover of A Whole New World in 1993. And it did all this without having a pop cover. If Let It Go from Frozen was the first sign that Disney didn't need pop covers to promote their films anymore, then the entire soundtrack of Encanto charting was the culmination point. Even in an era in which physical sales meant practically nothing, the Encanto soundtrack spent 9 weeks at the top of the Billboard album charts, and some people were puzzled by its success. It's not like Disney soundtracks doing well is unusual. What was unusual is the degree to which all of its songs were omnipresent in one way or another. Quality aside, Moana 2 was a much more widely seen movie than Encanto, released 2 years later, and its soundtrack didn't feel like it had even 1/10 of the impact. Was Lin-Manuel Miranda that popular of an artist? Or could it have just been as simple as a lot of people really liked Encanto's soundtrack? Nah, couldn't be that. Well, there's no official scientific way to confirm why Encanto's soundtrack was so successful, but I do believe part of it was a case of being released at the right time. In 2022, we were still in the pandemic, and starved from musical content. Encanto's soundtrack felt like a breath of fresh air, with easily identifiable melodies and lyrics. Personally, I was disappointed with the Encanto soundtrack the first time I heard it. To me, there just wasn't much about it that seemed to pop, pun intended. And I've heard Lin-Manuel Miranda do this Howard Ashman-style wordplay better elsewhere. However, on subsequent viewings of the film, I have grown to appreciate its songs more. They certainly have their charms, and We Don't Talk About Bruno, no, actually kinda slaps. Since Encanto, Disney appears to have cut back on promotional pop covers altogether. They're just not as important to the marketing of the films as they used to be. Although Disney animated films still have pop songs in them, those are usually left for the end credits and are performed with a singer in mind. Disney's animated musical 2023's Wish, for example, had 5 promotional singles, all of which were taken from the film. But none of those songs made much of an impact because the movie itself was, well, To me, the peak of the Disney promotional pop era was an interesting time for the studio, when they were still trying to sell soundtracks and understanding how marketing worked then. Anyway, I looked at The Circle of Life and went the distance to make this video. Isn't that grand? See you next time, guys.